All right, so this is my website and we are on color gamut. So basically, class, color gamut refers to how many colors we can see or how many colors we can reproduce in with like a screen in front of you or on a printed piece, a printed poster, a printed piece of packaging. You also have like how many colors the human eye can see. That refers to the number of the gamut of the human eye as well. So we traditionally in graphic design, we deal with screens, and that uses RGB. And we use CMYK, which would be your 4 process inks. And that's what we would use to print things. And those create a couple of different gamuts that we have to deal with when we design things. So one of the first things I always caution designers to look for is when you are designing your software programs, whether it be InDesign, Illustrator, After Effects, or Photoshop, will tell you if a color may not reproduce properly when you would print it in CMYK. So I have Photoshop open here. Let me hop over to Photoshop. And if you look at my color picker here in Photoshop, you will notice that I have chosen, my file is RGB, and I have chosen this really, really bright kind of vibrant blue. Well, if you look right next to it, you have this little caution symbol with the exclamation mark in it. If I hover over that, it tells me, or it reads, warning, out of gamut for printing. So if I were to print this to a 4-color process printer, this bright blue probably wouldn't look that good. It would look duller. So the main reason that this can be a challenge for graphic designers, visual communicators, is that you don't want to create something on your screen that looks just extremely vibrant and bright and the colors are amazing, whether it's with color or even with a photograph. And then you send it off to the printer and you deliver 5,000 brochures to your client, and the final printed piece looks nothing like the PDF or the digital file that you sent them. And they say, well, what happened to my colors? So in avoiding this, you traditionally will want to design, instead of RGB, you'd want to design in CMYK. But even if you are working in RGB, these programs will give you this little caution and say you're out of gamut. So the best thing you can do to start with is just click on this. If I click on this, it moves it over and shifts it within this gamut and says this will look a little bit better. Now you see that this is a little bit duller than this. That's because we can't produce as many colors when we print in CMYK as we can on the screen in RGB. It just looks better. So let me cancel out of this, hop back over here. And what you'll see here is just a little like kind of infographic I made of the gamuts that we primarily use. So the color gamuts here, these are just the number of colors that we can reproduce with different types of processes. So if you look at the very outermost shape of kind of this cone shape here, this would be all of the colors that the human eye can see. This is how we've evolved as human beings. The color sensors, the cells in our eyes detect this amount of colors. If you come inside of that, the second largest here, oddly enough, is the old film. Like if you used to shoot movies in film or film for cameras. I hate to say it's the olden days, it was only about 20 years ago. But that had a smaller color gamut than the human eye, but it still captured quite a bit of color. Now, as we move into RGB, which is for all of our screens, our computers, our phones, our tablets, all of those handsets that we have, that is even smaller than film. And then as we move in even smaller, this triangle here with kind of the rounded corners, that's your printing, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. That's like if we printed a brochure or a catalog, or if you print here to our color printer, that is CMYK as well. So you can see within the RGB color gamut, if you're hitting like this really bright green here, You might not be able to hit that with CMYK, and that's why it cautions you. So if anything, if there's any possibility of any of your pieces or your designs going to print, I would suggest you design in CMYK, so there's never any problems with, hey, why is everything so dull, or this didn't look this good on the, or this didn't look this bad on the screen. If you think there's a possibility, and this does happen, where you're only going to be designing for screens or the computer, you can design everything in RGB. Nothing wrong with that. So it's something to think about as you think about choosing colors, starting colors, when you design a logo or something. So here's a couple of images that I color shifted in Photoshop, just so you can see the difference. This is a really bright, vibrant photograph. The top of it I've converted to CMYK. The bottom is the raw photograph that is RGB, which is obviously much brighter and more like real life. But you can see the color shifts in the green and the pinks, especially here. Not too much in the blue. The blue gets a little bit duller. The green is a touch duller on this one. It all depends on the color, the lighting, and everything. If we look at these umbrellas, you'll see that the RGB is on the left side and the CMYK is on the right. And you can see all of these, with the exception of the orange shifts a little bit. The blue shifts quite a bit to more of a grayish, dirtier blue. The green shifts a lot, and the pink shifts a little bit as well. So the main thing is what we've been talking about is, why does this matter, is you want to make sure that when you design something for your client, they are getting what they see, especially if you give them a proof or they get to view your initial design on the computer in a PDF or just in your raw files, if they don't see it printed out. So we do have these things called the Pantone Color Bridge books. They're laying around the graphic design department. We have them in almost every class. What they will do is they will give you kind of a preview. So a spot color is kind of like when you print colors. CMYK builds all the colors out of the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, just those 4 inks. But you could also print just one color, and that would be a specific color that when the printer opens up the can of ink, they just get this bright orange in it, and that has a certain Pantone color. So maybe if I'm designing a logo and I want it to be a certain orange, I'll pick a Pantone color to start. But I have to be aware that when I go to CMYK, this is the conversion of that. This is a good example of, this is going to be pretty dull. The greens here too, I might like this really, really vibrant green, but if I ever convert this and print it in CMYK, instead of just one spot color, it's going to be darker and a little bit less vibrant. The orange is a really big shift. So there are some colors in this book, there probably are better oranges, that are somewhere in between here, where they're still kind of bright and not quite as bright as this, but much brighter than this orange. And you want to find a nice balance when you're designing. All right, so that is color gamut, something that every visual communicator has to think about, especially in the digital age.